We're joined by Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum. You probably recall he served 12 years in the U.S. Senate representing Pennsylvania. Welcome back to Newsmax, Senator.
Well, thank you. It's great to be back.
Let's start with a wide open question. Why should Americans vote for Rick Santorum?
You want someone who has the courage to lead, someone who has shown time and time again across the board that I have the courage of my convictions. They're conservative convictions. Someone who has shown over the course of my experience in the House and in the Senate to take on issues such as entitlement reform. Everyone's talked about how we have to balance this budget, and we do. 40 cents of every dollar that is being spent in Washington is borrowed and being put on the next generation. I've been a leader on national security, particularly with respect to the Middle East and the state of Israel, two major pieces of legislation that I authored and got through initially over the objections of President Bush, so to protect and make Israel safer. And third, after national security, I've also been a cultural warrior, someone who's gone out and fought for life, someone who's had the courage to fight for that culture of life, and issues like partial birth abortion or the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, where I took the lead in making those things happen. So I think you want someone who's tested when you know there's going to be a temptation to get to Washington, D.C. and back down from what you say on the campaign trail. You have someone here that's actually done it, stood tall, and be able to fight and prove they could fight for those even when they weren't popular.
During the June 13th Republican presidential debate in Manchester, New Hampshire, you used the term America's fecklessness in dealing with threats from our enemies under the Obama administration. In a nutshell, where was Obama going wrong?
Well, the president has made it a policy of this country to distance ourselves from our allies. In fact, whether it's the Brits and our closest ally, where you have the administration seemingly backing away from their claims to the Falkland Islands, something that British soldiers fought and died to maintain, whether it's the Czechs or the Poles who were hoping for a missile defense shield and now found out in the paper that the administration was going to pull those missile defense systems out of those countries and leave them vulnerable to attacks from the Middle East and from the East. And the same thing with our allies in the Middle East. Israel, of course, first and foremost. What the president did in putting them behind the 8 ball. Honduras, Colombia, all across this world, the president has turned his back on our allies and on the other side has appeased our enemy. And as a result, we have situations in Iran where we had a tremendous opportunity to get rid of the existential threat to Israel. Iran, who's developing a nuclear weapon. The president's doing nothing to stop them develop that weapon, doing nothing to overturn that regime so they're no longer a threat to the Middle East.
Your fellow conservative and party presidential campaign rival, Michelle Bachmann, says Obama was dead wrong to send U.S. troops into Libya and that we have no vital interest at stake there. Do you agree with her, and why or why not?
Yeah, I agree that we were wrong to involve ourselves in Libya if we didn't know who the other side was. I mean, this is a failure of intelligence. Another part of the feckless foreign policy of this administration is our failure of intelligence. And here we had a situation we didn't know who the insurgents were in Libya, and yet we were bullied into it by the international community. The President of the United States should not be bullied by international interests. He should do what's in the national interest.
You said during the debate back in May in South Carolina that Obamacare is a game changer and the most important issue facing this country right now. The so-called individual mandate has not yet taken effect. If it's not struck down by the Supreme Court, how much of a game changer would Obamacare be then?
Well, if it's not struck down, it's a game changer in the fact that government will now have an IV hooked up to you. That in order for you to get the care that you want, you're going to have to do what the government tells you to do. In other words, the government tells you what policies, how much they're going to pay providers. The entire system is going to be micromanaged, not just Medicare and Medicare, but the entire healthcare system is going to be micromanaged by Washington, D.C., and you're going to have to be dependent upon them to get the care that you want. once that happens, and it happened in every country in Western Europe, the game is over. The welfare state has been locked in, signed, sealed, and delivered, and America as we know it, as a free country that believes in people and their self-reliance, is behind us.
When it comes to saving Medicare, Democrats have punted the ball, choosing instead only to attack Representative Paul Ryan's ideas. What's Rick Santorum's plan to rescue Medicare?
Well, I actually support in principle what Paul Ryan is suggesting. In fact, the only concern I have is I don't think Paul Ryan goes far enough. The problem is now. I mean, there's a $1.4 trillion deficit now. We're on a path that, you know, any day now, credit markets could say that, looking at the American debt situation, and say, you know, we can't continue to keep the credit rating that America has. I mean, this house of cards could collapse unless we get serious about doing something now. And Paul, while bold, you know, delays a lot of what he wants to do on Medicare. I would not delay it. I would move it forward. I think that what Paul Ryan has suggested and what I've advocated is to give consumers, seniors, power to be able to pick the kind of health care they want.
All right, there are some critics who say Paul Ryan's Medicare revision plan is tantamount to Republicans committing political suicide. How do you answer that?
I don't think it's political suicide at all. Look, ask seniors today, do they like their Medicare prescription drug coverage? Most seniors will say yes. Well, Paul Ryan's plan is pretty much the same as the Medicare prescription drug plan. Ask them if they like Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage, last year, 25% of Medicare recipients used Medicare Advantage instead of traditional Medicare.
And Democrats cut $500 billion away from that program.
Well, yeah, he's cut $500 billion away from the Medicare program, but the point is both Medicare Advantage and the Medicare prescription drug program use a premium support model, which is what we're suggesting here. It's not a one-size-fits-all government program, and you're right. What President Obama has done in Obamacare, he cut $500 billion out of the Medicare program by imposing a panel of 15 people who are going to ration care, ultimately ration care, in order to meet budget targets. We don't want to ration care from 15 people in Washington. We want to give people the ability to help us control costs by giving them the power to go out and do it themselves.
In the last election, people in your state elected a very conservative U.S. Senator, Pat Toomey. Now, can that be considered something of a bellwether that voters may be turning more conservative during the Obama presidency, or because of it?
Yeah, clearly this president has awakened a broad section of America that has obviously been disaffected and not realized what was going on. The Tea Party is a great example of that. So many Tea Partiers telling me, you know, we've never been involved in politics. We thought, you know, it was, you know, just sort of more of the same, Republicans and Democrats, and we now realized that it's not just the more of the same. It's a completely different scale of socialization or social, creating social policies under this administration, and that we need to get our country back. We need to restore our freedoms. We need to believe in people again, instead of having government do things for us.
Senator, do you regret endorsing Arlen Specter over Pat Toomey in the 2004 Pennsylvania Senate primary? And if so, what did you learn from that?
Yeah, if I had known that Arlen Specter was going to become a Democrat and vote for Obamacare and give us that, I would not have done so. But the reason I did it, and the reason I believe that was the right thing to do, was because we had a situation where we had a 51-49 majority in the United States Senate, and we had at least 2 and maybe 3 Supreme Court justices that were going to be appointed by the next president. And I believe that that was the most important objective in winning the presidency, was to make sure that we got 2 Supreme Court justices to hold on to our conservative majority on the court. Well, the linchpin in getting those justices confirmed in the past was a guy by the name of Arlen Specter. And when Specter asked me to help him coming down the stretch, I said I would do it if he would tell me, I mean, would commit to me, that he would support those justices that the president put up. He gave me that commitment. He kept that commitment. And Justice Alito and Justice Roberts are now on the bench. In particular, Alito would not have been confirmed but for really the great effort by Senator Specter to get him confirmed. So to me, this was an issue about the Supreme Court, and Justice Alito and Roberts are going to be there for another 20, 30 years, and that's a pretty good trade.
Of course, Specter denied he promised you anything.
Well, of course he's going to deny. Just look at the record. I mean, the record is that he was unflinching For someone as conservative as Roberts and Alito, for Arlen Specter to, without question, run to their aid and support him as valiantly as they did, I think shows where the commitment was.
Former Pennsylvania Senator and Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum, thanks so much and good luck out there on the campaign trail.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.